I said, there's no option. You guys, we have to do this.
Choosing an assisted living community is an emotional and life-changing decision.
I don't think we can be the only people in this situation.
Not only is it costly, it's an act of trust.
I was starting to see things that I was questioning.
Two families tell Contact 6 how their best-laid plans led to disappointment.
The end of her life, she was in so much pain, physically and emotionally.
This week on Open Record, their warnings on behalf of their parents.
I just don't want anybody else to go through it.
And what families need to know before taking the next step. From the FOX6 studios, this is Open Record. I'm Bryan Polcyn, and I'm joined as always by Open Record's executive producer, Sarah Smith. Hello, Sarah.
Hello.
And we are joined by Contact 6's Jenna Sachs. Hi, Jenna.
Hey.
We are recording this episode on Wednesday, November 12th. Recently, Contact 6 aired a couple of stories with warnings for senior citizens and, of course, their loved ones as well, specifically those transitioning into assisted living or a life plan community. The first story was about hundreds of thousands of dollars that families are spending on entrance fees, and one family's challenge getting that money refunded. The other Contact 6 report about memory care and why the Wisconsin chapter of the Alzheimer's Association wants legislation that creates more standards of care, specifically for that term. We're going to talk about that, both of these stories. We're going to speak with the Alzheimer's Association in a live interview. All of that is ahead on Open Record.
We are back on Open Record. If you drive anywhere across Wisconsin in your neighborhoods, you'll likely see signs that advertise memory care, but the term has no legal definition in our state.
That was a huge surprise to me.
I know.
Just that alone, I did not
right?
expect.
Like things you learn. So the Alzheimer's Association says that is leading to safety concerns, inconsistent care, frustration for families, especially those who are looking for care for their loved ones. So Jenna, let's start with what requirements there are for facilities to use the term memory care.
So basically any licensed community-based residential facility can claim to offer memory care. That licensing is overseen by DHS, and there are about 1,500 CRBFs in the state. And that's basically a community of people who live together. There's room and board. There may be some nursing services. There's supervision, support services around.
So that could be assisted living, but not necessarily. Is that right?
Right. It could be.
Okay.
Yes, assisted living facility would typically be a CRBF. But as it stands under Wisconsin code, there's no additional criteria to advertise the use of or the term memory care or advertise that you have a memory care unit or wing. It's the same requirements as other CRBFs. And under the Wisconsin code, you have to provide adequate training to staff, saying, you have training specific to your client group that will talk about safety risks, disease processes, communication skills, and you have to provide that training within 90 days of starting employment. But there's nothing additional written into state code about how you should care for people with dementia, the environment you provide, the training your staff has. And the Alzheimer's Association wants to change that. So there's enhanced criteria you have to meet in order to say you offer memory care.
Because I'm sure they feel a way, right? The Alzheimer's Association, like, obviously they want people that are, they want people that are trained for these, their members who are in there getting the care, and they want legislation. So like, what does that look like?
Sure. As they would say, these residents have the most needs, the most nuanced care required. So they want these facilities to be able to have truth in their advertising. So they want a safe, capable environment. They want tailored care plans, and they want more enhanced training annually and when you're initially hired. And a capable environment might mean it's a floor plan. They can find their way around. I went to a facility last week, and their memory care wing was circular. So you can't get lost. There's signage. Yeah. It's that kind of thoughtfulness that goes into what a memory care unit is expected to offer. And I think a lot of families go into these facilities hearing that they have memory care and then maybe learning that the standards for which they've been using are not the same as their own. So this would just kind of create standards across the state for what it means to have memory care.
I'm in my early 50s, and my peer group, we're all in that place where we've got children who are in high school or college or coming out of those things, but we've got parents who are in the 70s or 80s who are in that range where these things are happening. We're going, okay, what's going to happen next with mom? And I think all of these terms become new to us because if you haven't been studying this, it's been a thing on the back of your mind. One day we'll have to deal with that. I hear memory care and I know certainly enough about Alzheimer's, dementia, to think, okay, that's a place that specializes in this. There is so much regulation of this industry that I would just expect, well, there must be standards. To call something a memory care place, it was stunning to me to find out that there is, in Wisconsin anyway, there is no particular standard for using that term.
Right. And Wisconsin is in the minority in that it's really up to the facility to take extra steps if they choose to do so. But one thing I learned for this story is of the 12 Midwest states, 9 have requirements under law that either they have to have a certification to operate a memory care unit or wing, or you have to meet other specific criteria. And so states like Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa, all have these standards in place. So we're in the minority, and nationwide, 37 states have this kind of legislation in place. So Wisconsin certainly is in the minority, and that's one reason the Wisconsin Alzheimer's Association is optimistic about pushing this legislation.
Well, and I think for people who are like this, and we have parents who are getting to that age where you need to start looking for stuff, it's not just looking for another place to live. It's not just an apartment. It's not just a condo. You need to think about the care. And so there's already that added stress, and you're kind of swirling because obviously you're feeling a way about maybe your parents moving into a place like this. So you interviewed a woman in Mequon who there was memory care, but it wasn't really provided in the way that she kind of expected it to. So like, what was her experience? Because again, for family members who are looking for these kind of facilities, you're dealing with a lot already. And so you just want to be like, here, take care of my loved one.
Right. It's such a huge and overwhelming decision. And we sat down with Marilyn Theot. Her mom was also named Marilyn Brown. And in 2008, her mom had a medical emergency. She was in the hospital. She was in independent living at the time. And doctors said she can't go back to that. She needs to be in assisted living. We'll keep her for 3 days, and then you need to find a place for her to live. So the family went out.
3 days, man.
3 days to make this huge
that you
decision.
have on you.
And they said, we thought about bringing her into our home, but we have so many stairs. It wouldn't be safe for her to be there. So they went out and looked for places that specifically advertised memory care. They found a facility they said looked beautiful. But after moving Marilyn Brown in, her daughter says, I just started to notice things that didn't seem right to me, starting with activities. You know, they said they would have dementia capable activities. Her mom had vascular dementia. She said they were too complicated for her. She was getting frustrated. She was lashing out. And then I noticed that the staff didn't really have the training to calm the dementia patients. There are skills and tactics you can use to calm someone when they're confused and upset. And she also said, my mother was meticulous about her appearance in her life, and I was noticing she wasn't showering and she wasn't brushing her teeth. And people with training know how to motivate them to get these tasks done, especially when they're important to them. And then finally, and this is where the story adds on a sad note, she said they didn't seem to understand how this disease progresses. So in 2009, she noticed her mom took a steep drop in her cognition. And she asked the staff about it, saying, you know, does she have a UTI or something that can cause these issues? And the staff reassured her, no, it's just her dementia. This is normal. She's fine. But then she said her mother fell. And they went to an emergency room, and the doctor there discovered her mom had a pretty significant UTI. Her daughter thinks maybe because she wasn't bathing enough. And a UTI can cause a fall.
Urinary tract infection, right? And that can cause that very severe confusion that would probably be, for someone without that training, might just appear to be more of a memory issue.
Right. And what followed was really sad for her and her mother. Her mother had 8 weeks before she died. And in that time, she was in a lot of physical and emotional pain. And her daughter just felt like it wasn't necessary. That didn't need to happen that way. And the end of her mother's life could have been different. Her mother was actually on a waiting list for another facility at the time of her passing, but there are waiting lists for a lot of these places.
You know, I also think about the workers, though, because these are not high-paid jobs.
No.
And so for someone who is being thrust into this, and a place their employer has advertised that we offer memory care, and they go, here, handle it. And they go, no one trained me for this.
Right.
How am I supposed to know what to do? I know young people who've worked in these places, and they do their best. Honestly, it's God's work. It's, you know, bless them for I wouldn't want to be the one doing
draining
some of that
work.
care.
Yeah.
It is draining work. But if you haven't been properly trained, how can you?
Right. And there's a lot of turnover, and there's 90 days until you're supposed to get whatever adequate training your facility decides to offer. And that's one thing that we wanted to include in this story, because we interviewed the Wisconsin Assisted Living Association about the possibility of legislation on this issue. And they said they were concerned about staffing already, saying, we're already having trouble getting staff and we can't pay them enough. And we can't pay them more if they're more highly trained or
And
if
by
they
the way,
have
they
additional
say
skills.
they can't pay them more because of the low Medicaid reimbursement rates and
And
things like that, right?
that's what they say is a big part of it. So Wisconsin has something called family care, and it's a Medicaid waiver program, and it basically provides funding for low income people. But the WALA, the Wisconsin Assisted Living Association, would say it doesn't cover the full cost of care, which is putting facilities in tight financial situations already. So he was saying, I'm open to this discussion. We're on the same page that we want high quality care in our state, but I really want funding to be a part of this discussion. He likened it to an unfunded mandate, saying, how can we provide, better facilities and more training for staff without extra funding? So that was his
my question
counter-argument.
about that too. But I'm going to hold off because I want to ask, we have a guest from the Alzheimer's Association. I want to ask that question of our guest.
Right. I know what your question is. I will add one other thing that the WALA would say is, they're concerned that legislation would lead to fewer memory care facilities in our state because there would be fewer who could meet the criteria. And I'm sure I know what your question is.
I just feel like if I'm shopping around for my mom or my dad, and you say memory care, if you say we don't have the training, we can't afford it, then just don't claim you can do it. That's the question. I'll ask that more directly of our guest. I think maybe that's a good time. Yeah.
Sure. We can take a break and come back.
The Wisconsin Alzheimer's Association has been advocating for this memory care legislation we're talking about. When we come back, we're going to interview its Director of State Affairs, Vanessa Kent. That is ahead on Open Record right after this.
We are back on Open Record. We've been talking about memory care in Wisconsin and an effort by the Alzheimer's Association to get legislation that defines what offering memory care actually means in our state. Vanessa Kent is the Director of State Affairs for the Wisconsin chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. She joins us now for an interview. Vanessa, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, Vanessa, can we start with the concerns the Alzheimer's Association has about memory care in Wisconsin today? Why do you feel like more regulation is needed?
Sure. So we have seen a growing issue when it comes to memory care facilities. Like you were talking about before, we have families coming to us saying they expected to receive high quality care. They expected their memory care facility they sought out for their loved one was specialized and experts in caring for their loved one with dementia. And they unfortunately found out the hard way that that's not the case, and that there are not additional standards on these community-based residential facilities or assisted living facilities, we call them, beyond for these memory care services.
I was talking just before the break about the person that Jenna interviewed from the Wisconsin Assisted Living Association, is that right? And they were talking about the concerns about the unfunded mandate. If we have to do more training, that costs money. If we can't afford that, then that's just a requirement that we can't pay for. And these are already difficult positions to pay. But I guess my question is, then why call it memory care? If you say I have a service, aren't you suggesting I have people here who are trained to provide that service?
Absolutely. And that's where the truth in advertising comes along. Memory care facilities are already charging a premium for their services. And to Wisconsin families, we have data that suggests around $7,000, if not more. I mean, we hear colloquially over $10,000 a month to have your loved one at a memory care facility. And so these facilities are already charging more for specialized care. They're claiming to have that specialized care and provide that specialized care. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. There are facilities that are doing it really well, but we want to raise the bar for those facilities that aren't taking those additional steps to make sure that, if you're claiming to be memory care and that you are providing high quality care to people with dementia.
I want to ask one more quick thing, if it's okay, and this is a sort of federal versus state. I know that the federal government regulates nursing homes, but am I correct that they don't necessarily regulate CBRFs or assisted living facilities? So this does come down to what the rules and regulations are here in the state?
Yes, I would say it is mostly a state issue. There is statute as well as administrative code that the Department of Health Services has oversight on, and so we do have that flexibility to, take it a step further, create a memory care designation, and additional standards for these facilities.
One of the things that Jenna talked about a little bit earlier in the podcast was, just kind of what a proper memory care wing or area might look like, based on layout. They may have better training on de-escalating situations. So what kind of list of criteria, do you want to see these facilities have to meet in order to be called memory care?
The For us, good quality memory care looks like having dementia specific training for all staff to start with, having initial training that covers topics like person centered care, what even are the different types of dementia, what communication strategies are there, what challenging behaviors might people with dementia express, and how can you de-escalate those situations or avoid them entirely. So that's number one, having that initial training and then even continuing education on that since you are working in a memory care facility. But beyond training, we also are concerned about the physical environment. Like Jenna said, having safe dementia capable environments that are easy to navigate, that are secure, because 60% of people with dementia will wander at some point. So we don't want them to, elope from the facility without staff knowing. And then also having person centered engagement and like a memory care program that engages people and supports their cognitive health, so that they are really having high quality care and, maintaining dignity.
Vanessa, I'm interested in hearing the stories that you're hearing on your end from people who are active in the Alzheimer's Association about their experiences with memory care facilities that maybe prompted you to take this step. Are you hearing about people wandering? Are you hearing about cases like Thea's that motivated this push for legislation?
Yes, unfortunately, we do hear this too often, and that's why we just couldn't, we couldn't continue down this path of not doing something about it. And so I've had constituents come to me and tell me about their loved ones who have wandered from the facility. They left the facility and were found in winter in the parking lot, without a coat. It really, really tragic situations, unfortunately. And then even just a lot of situations where people feel like they're having to educate the staff on how to care for their loved one. We've had people tell me that they had staff ask, what is Alzheimer's disease? What is dementia? What do they have? And so that has been really shocking when those situations arise, because again, like we've said, people are assuming and expecting specialized care and expertise, and like I said, they're not always getting that.
What you're talking about in this bill is not like taking a semester at college to learn about memory care. It's 8 hours of training initially and then 4 hours a year of continuing education. How does that requirement that you're proposing compare to what our surrounding states require for the same thing?
Very similar to what other states have enacted. Sometimes the hours can shift depending on what makes sense, but really it gets into those topics. What are the different types of dementia? What are the communication strategies? What does person-centered care look like? That's really what we want to focus on. And also the environment is really the big piece of this as well. Some states really do that environmental piece quite well, and so that's kind of where we're borrowing from. But we've seen, like you said, the surrounding states in the Midwest have similar legislation. We've seen it with blue states, red states, purple states like Wisconsin, and so we're really confident that we can move this forward.
I do wonder for someone who is in that, when you talked about Miss Thea
Hmm.
having 72 hours to find a place. When you're in that moment, you haven't been planning on it. All of a sudden,
Hmm.
you have to do your research and your homework and figure things out. What are some questions you should be asking, especially if you know memory care is a need? What are some key questions you should ask when you find a facility you think this one might meet the needs, but what should I be asking?
Definitely. I would say ask about what does memory care mean to them? What does how are staff educated on how to care for people with dementia? Have they had experience with, my loved one's specific form of dementia? What environmental protections are there? How are they ensuring that my loved one is actively engaging in the activities that are at the facility? Those are the sort of questions you can ask. And then I'll also add in that the Alzheimer's Association has a 24/7 helpline that are staffed with clinicians and social workers that can help people work through these challenges of where can I take my loved one, where can I find facilities, and what questions do I need to be asking them.
Piggybacking off of that too, I think it's one thing, and I'd like to believe all people are good at heart, but it's, if someone says, oh yeah, we've all had training. Oh yeah, you should bring your loved one here. Are there things that like Gen Pop, like if Brian and I went into one looking for one for our parents, are there things I can see with my own eyes that, I can kind of check off a list? Like, like I said, Jenna mentioned the layout, and you had talked about the doors and the locking, mechanisms and stuff. Are there things that even if they say that, oh, we have training and everything's great, that I can still see with my own eyes if I'm going to one of those facilities?
Say so. I mean, definitely, like you said, pay attention to how secure the building is. Pay attention to how staff are working with the other residents. Are they engaging them, paying close attention to them, handling them when they need to? Those sort of things. I think you can keep an eye out for to really help give you a fuller picture of the services of the facility.
I went to a facility last week, and one thing they taught me that I didn't know is when you have Alzheimer's and dementia, you're actually at a higher risk of depression. So it seems like these people require really nuanced care. Is that fair to say, Vanessa?
Absolutely. And if you've met two people with dementia, they are completely different, right? Every person with dementia has a different experience with their journey. They have a different progression of the disease. There are multiple kinds of dementia, not just Alzheimer's, but there are other forms that can make certain behaviors more likely. And so being knowledgeable in those different types of dementia is really key. And like you said, the other risks that come along with dementia, like UTIs, like falls, you need to always be vigilant about those.
One quick thing I have about it, I wonder if there's some agreement on this. We heard from Walla saying the Assisted Living Association saying that the Medicaid reimbursements are just so low that they can't pay people more than they are, and they're concerned about cost. In terms of that, I think of, you talked to 10,000 a month earlier for a memory care place you're hearing, and I think, I don't know how many middle class families have 10,000 a month available to put someone up in a high quality facility. So what Medicaid can pay is obviously pertinent. Is the Alzheimer's Association on board with the idea that Medicaid reimbursement rates should be higher for this kind of thing, or where are you on that?
Absolutely. The Alzheimer's Association has always supported measures that increase the pay for these caregivers, and we will continue to support those measures. We just feel like this is kind of the next step in that, in preparing staff. We want to adequately pay them, but then we want to train them and educate them so that they feel confident doing this work, because it is challenging. And if you're not adequately trained, if you don't know how to work with people with dementia, you're not going to enjoy your work, and you're not going to want to stay in this field. And we absolutely need to improve staff retention. And so that's what we're hoping to do with this legislation.
There's so many questions, and maybe I'm starting to make this personal as I think
Yeah.
about
Right, I know.
Well, it is personal. That's a good point, because
Yeah.
it's personal for a lot of people.
It weighs on you that you want to care for your loved ones, and there's the fear that you're going to send them somewhere where they aren't cared for properly. And this is a big one, to know that where you send your mom, your dad, your loved one, that these are people who have the adequate training to take care of it. obviously that's of interest to people. This legislation we're talking about, what is the status of that? And is it, where are you on? Are you still meeting with lawmakers? Do you have a bill that's been introduced? Does it have a bill number? Where are you in the process?
And so we are working with bipartisan legislators at the state capitol to draft a bill. We're still in that drafting process, but we are still having positive conversations, engaging stakeholders, and making sure that we're creating a bill that will truly carry out the intent of it, which is to improve quality care for our people with dementia in Wisconsin. And so we are still hopeful that we can get something introduced this session and have it move forward.
Vanessa Kent, Director of State Affairs for the Wisconsin chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. Thank you so much for being here on Open Record.
Thank you.
When we come back, Rena Martin was happy spending her final years in a life plan community, but what happened after her death prompted her children to write to Contact 6, why they're waiting on a $200,000 refund when we come back. Welcome back to Open Record. A family is waiting for a large entrance fee refund from a life plan community in Wauwatosa. Their parents paid the money 17 years ago before moving in with the idea it would be refunded to their kids after their deaths. Jenna, that money has not been refunded, so why hasn't that happened?
So it all comes down to their parents' contract with this facility. So in 2008, they moved their parents, Robert and Rena Martin, into a life plan community called St. Camillus.
Which, by the way, what is that?
Yeah.
So a life plan community is basically, it's sometimes called continuing care, but it offers independent living, but also higher levels of care on the same campus. So you may start out in independent living, but you can move to assisted living, and after that nursing care, and there's basically that continuation of care provided. There are also usually activities, a sense of community, exercise classes, and so on. But the idea is you're guaranteeing your spot and a place to live out your final years, no matter how your disease progresses or how your life
leveling
progresses.
up through the process as you go.
Sounds
Pretty
great,
much.
right?
So this family, it started out as a good story. Their parents were on the waiting list for a number of years. They took a little final convincing to move in, but Rena had broken her legs and Robert had early stage dementia. So their kids said, we have to do this now. So they moved their parents into an 850 square foot apartment. And interestingly, I don't know if a lot of people know, there are large entrance fees associated with a number of these communities.
Something I did not know about, and I, again, perked up. Wait, what is this?
Right. So they, in this case, paid $200,000 down. This is basically to move into the apartment. So after that, you pay a monthly rent. I think theirs was $2,700 a month initially after that. So the idea behind these entrance fees is you're guaranteeing your lifetime of care at this facility. That money will go toward, other needs, activities, healthcare, staffing, and so on. And the idea is that you'll get that money back after your parents pass away. So your parents may say, we invested this money in our community. When we die, you get it back. And that's what the Martins thought was happening.
The facility draws out of this, and then if they die, whatever's left is refunded. That's the idea?
Yes, if they don't use it, like for a missing rent or for nursing care that goes over what is expected.
It's like a little debit almost, so they kind of take from that. Okay.
Right. But this family says they were owed nearly $200,000. And it all came down to the contract language, because they do have a very ironclad contract with this facility. And what it says is, you get your money back after the unit is vacated and the next resident moves in and pays their deposit. So in this case, their mother died 2.5 years ago. Their father, unfortunately, died a year after he moved in, and they still haven't gotten that money back because the unit is still empty. Now, I want to say, I'm not saying St. Camillus is a bad place. It sounds like people are very happy there. It has a A+ rating with the BBB. It has 4 stars on Charity Navigator. But this story was specifically about entrance fees, because it's no question their mother was very happy there. She was head of the social committee. She had a very active social life. She was happy there. It was unfortunately what happened after her passing that prompted this story.
Well, and you talked with an elder law attorney. How did she feel about entrance fees? Because are they widely accepted and loved?
Well,
Love.
I don't know about that. She says they are common,
Yeah.
especially with these types of faith-based nonprofits, especially with continuing care communities. She will often advise people against signing a contract that says you can get the money back after the apartment is re-rented. She said there are places that don't require that kind of language, places that don't require an entrance fee period, and sometimes you can negotiate the wording of these contracts, so that's not what it says. But she said, on the other hand, people like these communities. They want to move in. If you like it there, pay the money and be happy, and you get value out of that. That's your individual decision to make. But don't assume that money is guaranteed, because there are a number of reasons that money may not come back to your family after your passing. And I think that part was a surprise to Martin's kids and to other families who have written to us since our story aired.
Well, and you guys know I'm the skeptic, right? So the thing I wonder then is, who's checking to make sure the apartment's been re-rented, and how do they count that? I mean, do they say as long as we have at least one vacancy in the building, it doesn't count as being re-rented? Does it have to be that specific unit? Who oversees that? Since, not disparaging St. Camillus, but since they're the ones with the money, are they the ones who decide, have we re-rented it? So is there any oversight of that?
So what the family has been doing is Debbie has been calling the facility every month asking for an update on the apartment, and they keep saying there's nothing we can tell you. She said, can I come see the unit? Can I see what it looks like? And they say, no, we don't do that. So basically, their contract says that they must make a reasonable effort to find a new resident for the unit. Now, it doesn't define what reasonable means. It could just be we're showing it with every other unit that's available. There could be 20 units available in a building, and they're just showing them all. It doesn't say you have to make upgrades. You have to fix up this place or promote it above others that have not been sitting as long. So it all comes down to that definition of the word reasonable in
Well,
the
and then I
contract.
wonder, but how do you, even if they say they have to make a reasonable effort, how do you prove or disprove that they have? Do you have to sue to get discover? I mean, like, how
Yeah.
do you know?
I mean, there's no way. They aren't allowed to go into the building and check out the unit. And that was part of what was frustrating for them. I said, is there anything about this unit? Does it look over a dumpster or something? And they said, no, I mean, it didn't have the best view, but it was next to the stairs. Right down the stairs was the chapel. Their mother really liked that she was close to the chapel, so they liked that unit. And they speculate that a newer building that has been built, another tower, another residential tower in recent years, is drawing some of those prospective renters away. They believe that people are going for these newer amenities and newer units, especially when they're paying large deposits anyway.
Did you check in? I'm sure
Yeah.
you did. I shouldn't
Yeah.
say did you, because I know you did.
Yeah.
With St. Camillus, like, did they talk about this family's experience in
Yes.
general, or?
So I only got a statement from them on the record. We did go back and forth in emails about what we could report, but basically they sent me a statement saying, we have been trusted as a life plan community for more than a century. We're dedicated to the lives of these seniors and enriching them. We're compassionate, we're mission driven. And they also said, since the 80s, we've had a contract model that is standard within the senior living community. Now, there are other facilities that have different language in their contract. I spoke with one of them for this story. They say you get your money back when the unit is vacated and the next person moves in, or 1 year.
That's what
after
I almost said
the
that
unit
earlier.
is
I would have
Yeah.
looked really smart if I had said it. I was going to say, is there like a or 6 months
Yeah.
or a year?
So
at
not
least
everyone
there's a
has this
limit.
exact language. Other places say if it's not rented out, it's X amount of days pass and you'll just get the money back anyway.
I wonder if that's something that, because then I think you should look for this in the contract, right? You never think to look at that, but if you look for that provision, you go, okay, this one doesn't have an or a year.
Yeah.
Are they? Can you go back to them and say, I'll sign this if you add this piece of language? I mean, I guess everything's a negotiation.
You can try, but a lot of these places do have wait lists, and
Well,
so
then the
that can be
apartment
a
should be
difficult-
full.
I know
I mean,
exactly.
that part,
Yeah,
I'm gonna push back to
Right.
them on that.
Yeah.
If you got a wait list and you can't change your contract, then I guess
If you're really worried about contracts in this stage of life, there are elder law attorneys you can hire to help you navigate and read these contracts and can maybe try to negotiate terms within them. And so I did not know that there were people who assisted with that. I did not know what an elder law attorney specifically did. And there are also reviews you can look up online. But unfortunately, there's no rating system out there for nursing homes and assisted living centers and so on. You can look at violations they have with the state and read those, but there's no basic
And it's
rating
tough.
or
I mean,
cost,
I've
you know,
covered
comparison.
these things for years, and even with all the things I'm familiar with looking at, it is difficult
Yeah.
to navigate through all of that. I will say though that the idea of an elder law attorney, you could say a lot of people, well, boy, can you afford that? But I guess if you're talking this kind of money,
Right.
is that worth hiring someone who can look through it and know what to look for?
Right. And we heard from a few other families after this story aired who paid around the same amount of money. But in our comment section in this story on Facebook, it was posted a couple of times, people were saying, you know, we paid $400,000 to move into a facility. So remember when they paid $200,000, that was back in 2008.
Yeah.
And it was for an older
gosh.
unit. So
Yeah.
those numbers could be much higher today. And I guess that's why it's, we felt really important. We thought it was important to raise awareness that these fees existed in the first place, and then just let people know about the contract language and the likelihood of getting it back. Because imagine if a facility goes bankrupt. There are other ways
Yeah.
that you might not get this money back if a facility closes. There could be legal issues, and there's just other circumstances that could arise.
So is the Martin family then just kind of in waiting now, right? Like they're just
Yeah.
kind of like hoping that that apartment rents out, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. I know that they were looking into filing complaints with state agencies. They were hoping we might be able to help, but it didn't seem to make a difference with St. Camillus. And yeah, they're just, I don't think they're giving up yet, but they kind of feel like they've exhausted a lot of options right now. And they are hearing from others. I think there may be some people who are now in communication because of our story and are discussing maybe how to move forward as a group.
I mean, it sounds like that their contract language says what it says. So unless
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
can prove the place has been rented, they're kind of stuck, right? So maybe it is a bit of a warning if you're looking at this kind of stuff, or a cautionary tale too.
Yeah, we kind of looked
look
at
at
it as a consumer alert, and basically not saying St. Camillus is doing anything wrong in their care of their residents or anything like that. This has to do 100% with the contract
Be
and
aware of
these
what you're
entrance
signing.
fees. Yeah, and I think that could apply to a number of facilities across our area who have similar contract language.
You know, this is one of those episodes where I feel like our job is supposed to be to educate the public, but I'm learning so much just talking about
Well,
this.
right.
And, you know, so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess that's the idea.
I really do feel like issues affecting this particular community are kind of underreported, because even in doing my research for this story, I didn't see a whole lot about it. And I only saw one state that was pursuing legislation about entrance fees. And I think it was Arizona, which makes sense since there are more senior communities there. But there's not a whole lot of reporting about this issue. And maybe that will change in the coming years as a new generation starts to move into these facilities in higher numbers.
Well, I hear these numbers of hundreds of thousands of dollars in
know.
entrance fees, and it's frightening, really, when you think,
Yeah.
you know, again, I wonder how many middle class, much less families without many resources can even afford the entrance fees in the first place.
The elder law attorney will say there are places that don't require entrance fees. So if you're really looking for somewhere, they do exist. So if that's a comfort to
But even
someone.
just to start doing research like now, it always seems like, oh, this is like a 5 year from now problem. You never know when a week from now you might be like, oh my gosh. And then you're in a panic in 72 hours having to find
Right.
a place.
And we had two families here. The one family had years to prepare.
Right.
The Martins had years to pick out a facility, and the other family had 3 days.
Yeah.
So I would say it's good to start ahead of time if you can, but it doesn't mean there won't be issues.
Well,
Right.
and you know, you talk about the money. If you do have a retirement nest egg and you are thinking, I want the best facility, the place that
Yeah.
I'm good, it's going
Yep.
to remove all of that concern, give that
Right.
peace of mind. I can certainly see the attraction, but still hire that attorney and make sure you know what you're signing. And it is time to go off the record. This is the part of the podcast where we get a little more casual, have a little fun by answering a question Sarah has prepared for us, and Jenna and I have no idea what is coming.
What is the best invention? What invention
Oh, so
is out
not
there?
counting
Not
technology.
technology. So don't say like, oh, my tablet is the best invention. Sorry.
That's okay.
I
I mean,
yeah,
the
like
wheel,
what?
but you know, are we
Okay.
going that far back?
But like, no, I mean, like modern day, maybe. Like, what do you have in your house that you're like, oh, thank the Lord this was invented?
Do you know what I wish I did have, or it was back when I had babies? Those fast bottle warmers. They
Oh.
have these bottle warmers now that will heat up formula in like a minute. Or like
To the
just
perfect temperature?
Perfect temperature. And I feel like I spend so much time in the middle of the night trying to heat stuff up. You're dabbing it on your wrist.
Stop it on your wrist, and you're like, I don't know, is it burning? Is it not?
That was one thing I was really envious when I found out that existed after
Yeah.
my twins were off formula.
Oh.
But that was one thing I wish I'd known about.
Okay. The can opener, top notch.
Oh,
Oh,
sure.
sure. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So
use
like,
it all the
I don't
time.
know. I was
So it
thinking about
doesn't have
that.
to be super complicated.
No, it
but a
doesn't have to be
simple can opener.
complicated.
Scissors.
Scissors are
God
great.
bless them.
Scissors.
Yep.
When I can't find a pair of scissors, that's like
A problem.
Yeah, it
And
is.
do you have scissors? I have like bathroom scissors.
Oh, yeah.
I have a pair in the laundry room. I have a
Kitchen
pair outside
scissors.
kitchen.
there's food scissors. The ones
Yes,
for cutting open
yes.
food bags, that stays
Yes,
with
and
the
that's
food
separate,
stuff, so that
right.
it's not being mixed with the other things.
It's kind of like my car chapstick and my office chap. Like we've acquired enough scissors over the years just from kids bringing them home at the end of the school year. So
I mean,
I think there's a pair in every room.
indoor plumbing's pretty big. I mean,
Pretty top
sometimes
notch.
I think like,
Yeah,
what
that's
if I
true.
lived 200 years ago and I didn't get a shower? Like,
yeah.
how sad.
Sometimes I'll throw that at my kids like back in the olden days.
Yeah, to
you know?
put your head in a bucket.
Yeah, and they're like, "What do you mean the 1900s?"
I'm grateful not to have
Jump
an
in a
outhouse,
lake. An
right?
outhouse. Yeah,
You know,
that's true.
So yeah, that's a big. But I mean, if we're going, we're not. I mean, those are major obvious.
Yeah.
Electricity and so
Yeah.
on.
I know,
so
and I was
forth.
trying to
And
think of like, okay,
Little
the other
things.
thing that I really like, and this is gonna sound so weird. So it's called the Battery Daddy. Have we talked about this on the podcast?
organize your battery.
It's-
It
my
organizes
husband
the
has one of those,
batteries.
yeah.
And I'm not kidding when it's like the best $17 that was ever spent on me as a gift. And I'm like, I mean, I should be the spokesperson because I tell everybody, I'm like, I'm going to buy you this thing because because how many of us have either had them all in the junk drawer? I used to have
Yeah.
them just lined up and
Yeah.
it was just such a mess. This organizes them beautifully. It's like a little briefcase for all your
I
batteries.
just have like a plastic tub that
No.
there's Ziploc bags for each type. The only problem with the battery daddies is if you have a Costco amount of then they
then they
can't
go
fit enough
bad
of them.
though. You at some point batteries
Oh, no,
go bad.
We use them all the
Oh,
time.
well, then you can
Everything
just have.
in the house has AAA batteries.
Okay.
I don't know, the remote controls and
I still wrote
everything,
it down. Maybe I'll get you two.
nose trimmers, you name it, whatever it is.
Another good invention.
That's another invention. No,
God
no
bless
hair
it.
trimmers.
God bless it.
I think
Tweezers.
Tweezers.
That's true.
The leaf blower is pretty big. My chore growing
yeah.
up was raking leaves. That was my job. And I always had little blisters all over my hands. Yeah. And so the leaf blower is pretty
You
exciting.
know what's so funny about that is I use mine for grass clippings.
Oh,
I use
of
it to
course.
clean off the deck. I use it
Yes,
to clean off
the
front
patio
porch.
stuff, yeah.
And the other day, I was actually blowing leaves, and I went, "Oh, this is kind of handy for this." And I went,
Oh my gosh.
it's a leaf
Literally.
blower. That's actually what it's for." So yeah, that's a good one.
I feel like leaf raking is one of those tasks where you're like, oh, look, love this fall crisp weather. I'm going to go out and rake the leaves. It's going to be so great. And it's one of those jobs that you think is only going to be like a 25-minute
Less
gig.
than eternity.
3 hours later, you're like, my hands are bleeding and my muscles are ache.
I will say that, and I don't know if this falls into the technology versus not, but the idea of the portable batteries, like the Ryobi batteries, because
Yes.
all of my garage tools and things
Yep.
are now battery powered,
Yes.
including my best purchase ever, I think, was getting a string trimmer that's battery powered. It's not
Yes.
that powerful, but I just need to trim grass.
Well, yeah.
How many times have I been fighting the carburetor
Oh my gosh.
on
Making
a
sure
string
you
trimmer
run, yeah, the
and just
stabilizer through it.
frustrated and
Yeah.
and I don't have to do that anymore. I just plug a battery in and go, and they're interchangeable. So I've got 10 different tools and a couple of batteries, and that's
Yeah.
all I need.
Ooh, how about a snowblower?
Oh,
Not that it gets
Yes.
much use lately.
That's
but yeah.
fair. Oh, yeah.
So fair. One of our things we used to do at the bus stop was we made our kids shovel. We used to have to wait for like 15 minutes for the bus, and they'd shovel
you're
the
like,
driveway.
"Here, take these."
They did it. It
Well,
was
the kids,
good.
they think it's fun. And I'm
yeah,
like,
do.
oh,
we're playing in the snow. Shovel this area.
yeah,
Right.
or they go, I want to help, and then they do 2 lines of the driveway, and then
Yeah.
they drop it, and then they're gone. I'm like, cool, thanks for that help.
I also think, do you guys is there anything in your closet in terms of like the things that you can hang multiple pairs of pants off of that only take up so much space?
Yes.
Space savers. I'm
Yes.
big on space saver things.
I like that. I have one that like hangs. It's almost like a cloth bunch of little bins to
Yeah.
hold like socks and random things that.
Yeah, I'm one of those people where like we look clean on the surface, but if you open a closet, it's like, whoa. So I don't want to think about what that means about me or like a metaphor for our lives. But like you walk in a closet, you're
Well,
like, this needs some organizing.
Right.
For me,
We
it's
could use
because I
some
haven't
stuff.
thrown enough stuff out, and I'm like, I need to fit more in here. But if I
yeah.
can save space, then I'm happy.
Right.
that.
There's lots of piles. My husband doesn't like my shoes are piled. He thinks that's bad for my
Yeah.
shoes. And I know that it's not great, but I don't
My
have
husband,
a shoe
yeah.
hanger.
Yeah.
He calls them drop zones. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
have a lot of them.
Drop
There's
zones, yeah.
one, like one at the table. There's one in our bedroom. It just,
It is my contention that 90% of home life and work in home life is just moving things from one room to another.
How can I,
gotta
organize
pick these
it here?
things up
Yes.
and move them there.
Yes.
These things need to go downstairs. Could somebody carry this basket over there? That is
Yes.
most of life.
Mine
at
ends
home.
up on the stairs. Like I
Oh.
move everything because it has to go up or down, and then
yes.
everything's
So you're
lining the
staging.
stairs.
Do you have one of
They're
those
staging.
cute like stair baskets?
No, I should. That's a
Oh,
good idea.
It's cute. I mean,
Yeah.
so then it's like disorganized, but make it cute.
Go home and look at how many places in your house
Yes.
you have staging areas for
Stuff.
things that need to go to another room. And lastly, I'm
So
going to wrap
right.
it up with
Yep.
this. I can't believe I didn't say it, but I'm going to say it now. The air fryer.
Oh.
Anyway, we don't have to go back there. We'll take a break. We'll wrap things up when we come right back. That is all the time we have for this week. If you have a topic you would like us to discuss on Open Record or an issue you think we should investigate for Fox 6 News, send us an email to fox6investigators@fox.com. I want to mention, by the way, if you have TikTok or Reels or whatever,
yeah.
we've been putting snippets of the podcast out there. Last week, we had Wes Olszewski, I think it was,
Yeah,
who was here to talk about the Edmund Fitzgerald. One of his clips has 167,000 views. People
So
are loving
many.
what he
That's
was
so
talking
exciting.
about. But yeah,
That
it
is
was great.
exciting, I know.
That was
obviously
a good special. We should
It
promote
absolutely
the
was.
special.
It was
It's still on our
good.
website.
The
It is.
Edmund
It's on
Fitzgerald
Fox
special,
Local.
Yeah.
Gales
YouTube.
of November. Keep an eye
Yep.
out for it. As always, thank you to the people who make this podcast possible, including our executive producer, Sarah Smith, our editor, Dave Machuda. Well, this week it'll be Tim Primo, who's behind the scenes there. With that, I'm Bryan Polcyn. Well, Jenna, of course, sitting right here. I almost said it without saying Jenna.
You already forgot about me. It's fine.
Anyway,
It's fine.
that's all. With that, I'm Bryan Polcyn, and we'll be back next week.